What's the story, Morning Glory? What's the word, Hummingbird? Thank you so much for clicking on my channel and for joining me for this review of Love After Lockup Season 5, Episodes 11 and 12. It was a full 2 hours and 20 minutes of this show back to back, and it was so exhausting. From 8 until 10 o'clock. It was just too much, but I survived. Here we go. Let's talk about Red and Joy Nami. So Red is still outside of his mother's house where Joy had dropped him off because she said that she was through with him because he had taken off. She didn't know where he was. She couldn't get in touch with him. She kept on calling him. He wasn't picking up his phone. She was left up at the hotel by herself. And this was when Red had ran off with his so-called best friend, Julie. And, they found a hotel. I don't know if it was the same hotel that Joy was staying in or another hotel, but they found a room and they ended up sleeping together while Joy is by herself in her room waiting for Red to come back. And the fact that this guy would do this and that he would do this on television, it just shows the kind of character he has, which is absolutely none. So the producers ask Red, is he going to confess to Joy that he was with Julie? And he says eventually. And the only reason why he says eventually is because she's going to see it on the damn show. So she's going to find out anyway. But if it wasn't for the show, Red does not seem like the kind of guy that's going to confess all of his deepest, darkest secrets to his girlfriend. So Red says that being with Julie was not as good as being with Joy, and that he would never choose Julie over Joy. Once again, this shows the kind of person that he is, because a real man, a gentleman, would never compare women that he's been with publicly. That's just not something that you would do. It just shows how low class you are. So the fact that he did that, and he did that on television, and I understand that he did it because he wants to appease Joy and kind of like, tell Joy that even though I messed up and I was with another woman, you're better. And I'm always going to choose you over her. And, being with you was a lot better than being with her. And I understand that it's just a way for him to manipulate Joy. But just the fact that he would even say this in public on television, it just shows, what a low down dirty dog he really is. So he keeps calling Joy incessantly, calling her, leaving messages. And he's asking, are you going to come pick me up? And she keeps telling him no. So I noticed that in this scene, while he was sitting in that chair in front of his mother's house waiting for somebody to come pick him up and his stuff was out there on the curb, I noticed that the phone that he was holding, this just shows the poor quality of this show and the poor editing, which a lot of people have pointed out, in other areas as well. But in last night's episode, as he's sitting there, the phone that he's holding in his hand keeps changing. Like, 1 minute he's holding a phone with a red cover. The next minute he's holding a phone with a clear cover. And it's like changing that quickly. And I'm like, why can't y'all hire better editors? This is a pretty successful show. This show has done pretty well for itself. Y'all can't hire better editors, because there's been a lot of inconsistencies on this show throughout the time that it's been on television, and the editing is sometimes it's just trash. So Joy comes back, and she eventually comes back, and they wanted us to believe that she was on her way back to New Mexico, and that she was like 5 to 8 hours away from wherever Red was. I don't believe it. I don't think she drove 5 to 8 hours away and then turned around and came back and got this man. I think she went back to her hotel, took a nap, got something to eat, and then went back and picked him up, because she eventually does come back to his mother's house. And, she tries to be all like she's laying down the law with him, telling him, don't you play me, don't cheat on me, and don't do this to me again. And he's like, oh, baby, I promise I won't. So Joy said that they've been together for 7 years and that she can't end a 7-year relationship over 2 days of whatever the hell this was. So, and like I said, you cannot count, and I always say this, you cannot count a jail relationship, a prison relationship as a real relationship, because y'all are not living in the real world dealing with real world issues. One person is stuck. He doesn't have any other choice. He or she, the one who's incarcerated, they have no other choice but to give you all of their time and their attention, because they're stuck. They're behind bars. They can't go and do anything like a regular person. So you're thinking that, oh, I gave this man 7 years of my life. No, you didn't. You didn't give him 7 years of anything. He didn't give you 7 years of anything. Your relationship is starting the day that this man was released. So 14 days y'all have been together since he's been released, that's what your real relationship is. And within those 14 days or 21 days, he's already been with a whole nother woman while you're waiting for him upstairs in that hotel room. So she said that she can't end it over 2 days of nonsense of him running away from her, whatever he was doing. And she says that her son Sway, he's waiting. He's been waiting for this. Your 3-year-old son, Sway, doesn't know what the hell is going on. If he never sees red in his life, it's not going to affect him. He's going to be just fine. He's probably going to be better off without a person like this in his life, because eventually Sway is going to see this, if y'all even stay that long, and stay together that long, and he's going to see, what kind of a person his mother drug home to so-called raise him, or to help raise him. No, Sway, this is the thing that I really can't stand. These women who love to date these ex-felons or ex-convicts, whatever you want to call them, they will use their children to justify why they're making these really bad decisions with these men. Your son, Sway, does not need this. Okay, he does not need this in his life. He just needs you. And if you need a partner, he needs a partner that's not going to cheat on his mother within days of being released from prison. So leave your son out of this. So Joy says, don't play me. And he promises not to. Red says that he's, the only thing that he's looking forward to, or the thing that he's looking forward to the most, is some kinky adult time with Joy. That's what he's looking forward to. He said nothing about, being a father, being a husband, providing for Joy and Sway. He says the one thing that he's really looking forward to is some kinky adult time with Joy, because Joy seems to be really open-minded and willing to do anything. She seems like the kind of person who is willing to do anything to keep a man. Girls like Joy will do anything under the sun to keep a man. And they give guys like Red chance after chance after chance after chance. As long as Red is willing to come back to Joy after he's been, rolling around, in dirt out there, collecting fleas and all other kind of debris, and then bringing that back to Joy. As long as he's willing to come back, Joy will always and forever be willing to take him back. Joy, I thought you really were proving yourself to be a woman of value when you were talking about you were going to leave him behind and go back to New Mexico without him. But no, you ended up being a typical person, a typical woman who's very desperate, with no self-esteem, no self-worth, no self-value. You're putting a man before your own kid. So yeah, you did exactly what was expected of women like you. Moving on to Andy and Britney. So Andy and Britney, they're kind of like the reverse of Joy and Red. So Andy and Britney, when she broke up with Andy, Britney went back to taking drugs. She went back to meth. And so she said that, she was gone for like 2 weeks. She was on it for 2 weeks. But once again, she's clean and ready to start her life all over again. She says that she has to take a drug test before she's able to visit her children. So the woman who was, throwing stones at Andy for being a bad dad because he was on the road driving trucks or whatever he was doing, she was very critical of his parenting. This is the woman that can't even see her children until she takes a drug test. So Britney finally got a phone, and she's been texting. Andy says that she has been texting him from her new phone, and I guess she's still begging for money, because we saw her say that she's still waiting for the rest of her 200, because he promised her 12, he gave her 1,000, and so she's waiting for the remaining balance. Andy is still sticking to his story that there was fraud on his account, which nobody is buying. And so he's out there fishing with his kids, and he's telling his children basically that, it was a horrible situation with Britney. They were never on the same page as far as her relationship. And his kids tell him, Dad, we told you so. We told you this woman was bad news, but you didn't want to listen. Britney meets up with one of her friends who looked to me like she was I don't know, like she could barely stay awake. So she meets up with one of her friends, and she's at this little boutique because she wants to get a care package for her daughter Gracie, who is in college. Britney says that Andy's wife had contacted her on Facebook, sent her all these messages between her and Andy to prove that, Andy was still communicating and was still very much involved with his wife, who ended up not even being an ex-wife, even though Andy had said that they were divorced, and they showed the clip of him saying that they were actually still very much married. And so, Brittany is like, oh, the lies that this man comes up with, he'll never end. He's just a big fat liar, blah, 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 blah. And, she feels very justified in treating him the way that she treated him because he was still messing with, or still at least communicating with his estranged wife. So at the boutique, she is at the register to pay for this stuff for her daughter Gracie, and her friend asked her, do you have enough money or something like that? And she was like, yeah, I have enough. But then she quickly texts Andy asking him to send her remaining balance, the $200. Andy, at the time that he received the text, was out there fishing with his two kids, and he was like, look at this, she's still asking me for money for $200 to pay for Gracie's care package. And he tells his children, what kind of care package costs $200? The kind that you're going to eventually pay for, because he did eventually send her the money, even though he told his children, I'm not going to send her the money. In fact, I'm going to block and delete her number. Well, during her confessional, he ends up giving her, she stops whatever she was saying and she looks at her phone, and we see that Andy did send her the $200, even though it was way after the fact. He still sent it. That's the point. He didn't block and delete anything. He still went ahead and sent her the money. So Britney talks about how Andy is a scammer, but I'm like, girl, you're the biggest scammer of all, because you had no intentions of even being with this man, but you got $1,200 out of him, a phone, clothes, a place to stay, and you didn't even want to be anywhere near this man. You didn't want to be anywhere near his orbit. You're the biggest scammer of all, Britney. So the way that their little story ends is that Andy ended up divorcing his wife, his estranged wife. And I think he divorced her because he really thinks that him and Britney are going to reconcile, because a little blurb said that he is open to reconciling with Britney. And I'm thinking to myself, did you see the show at all, Andy? Did you watch yourself at all? Because this woman made a complete fool out of you. She used and abused you, and you're talking about how you're still willing to reconcile with her. Yes, Britney will definitely come back to Andy to use and abuse him more. That's all she's interested in. The fact that it's easy money for her. It's just too easy for her to walk away from. Moving on to Mikey and Chelsea. So Mikey has arrived in Ohio to visit Chelsea, to meet her children, and to meet her father, which never happened. So all three of her kids come home from school. Chelsea introduces Mikey to them, and her daughter, who looks just like her. She's got two teenagers, and then she's got the younger one. Her daughter is very, very cautious about Mikey, because her daughter tells us there's been a lot of guys in and out of their home, and some of Chelsea's boyfriends have not treated her children right. So the daughter is very, very cautious, but she's like, you know what? So far, he seems like a really nice guy. He really wasn't what I expected, but her daughter has her good eye on Mikey. So, so I'm watching the scene where they're sitting at the table and they're eating dinner, and Chelsea's son, her oldest son, has been getting in trouble with the law, and Mikey is trying to give him advice because he's been there, done that, trying to let him know, stay off of this path, try to do right, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm thinking to myself, so Mikey is contemplating whether or not to move to Ohio, and he's, spending time with Chelsea and her children right now. But the whole time I'm thinking about Hadley, and I'm thinking about how that little girl, waited for him for so long, and now he's going to turn around and move to Ohio and play daddy to these other children when his own daughter wants him back so bad. And I understand that, Mikey has to live his life, and it wasn't like he had full custody of Hadley. But still, I'm just like, that little girl, her heart's going to be broken when she realizes that her dad is moving to Ohio to be daddy to these three kids who could probably care less about him, are not really that interested in him being a father figure for them. And then you have Hadley, who is just, I don't know, it's just really sad. So anyway, Chelsea's best friend, Beth, shows up. And so Beth and Mikey, they have a chance to have a one-on-one conversation. Beth is asking Mikey, what are your true intentions with Chelsea? Of course, he's going to say, I love her. I want to be with her. I want to take care of her and her kids. And then she asked him, has he ever been on drugs? And Mikey admits that, yes, he did have a problem, but he is in recovery. So as they're conversating, Beth is like using sign language with Mikey. And I'm thinking, why is she using, I guess it's just a force of habit, because I don't think Mikey is hard of hearing. I know he is hearing impaired, but he wears a hearing aid, I thought. But anyway, so she was using sign language with him. So the kids come down and they want to give Mikey a tour of their home. And so while he's giving them a tour, Chelsea and Beth are having a conversation. And Chelsea tells Beth that Mikey keeps asking her about the $5,000 that she has in her account. And Beth tells her, well, it's none of his business. You don't have to tell him anything. And of course, Chelsea agrees that she's not going to tell him anything about the money. And she says that anytime that she does talk about her money, somebody ends up stealing it from her. So she's like, no, I'm not going to tell him. It's none of his business. So he's just going to have to get used to it. So then the next time that we see Chelsea and Mikey, Mikey had planned a date. He planned for them to go horseback riding the next day. Unfortunately, her kids got sick. So Chelsea was really worried about that. So Mikey tells her, your kids will be fine. Just have your friend come over and watch them, which she ends up doing. And so they're on their way to their date when she gets a message on her phone from her oldest son's probation officer or something saying that, your son had court this morning. Where are y'all? So Chelsea's in a full panic. She, reverses the car, decides to go to the courthouse. She's like in full panic mode. She thinks she's going to jail because she didn't bring her son to court. So Mikey's like, relax, it's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. She cannot relax. She rushes into the court. I don't know how long she was in there. She comes back out. Everything is fine. They gave them a new court date. There's no reason to panic, Chelsea. It's okay. It's going to be fine. The FBI is not coming after you to arrest you because you forgot about your son's court date for his petty theft because he was trying to steal something out of a vending machine. So this is where Mikey, acts like, well, I don't really know if I can, be in a relationship like this because number one, she doesn't want to talk about the money. Number two, she's always in panic mode and I can't, talk her off the ledge. So he's acting like he's seriously contemplating whether or not he can be in this relationship with Chelsea. So after that, we see them at a restaurant, and Mikey brings up the money. He wants to know, where did she get this money from? Because he's worried that she's probably involved in illegal activity. I seriously do not think that Mikey is worried about Chelsea being involved in illegal activities like selling drugs or anything. I think he's just really curious to know where this money came from, especially since when they were in his state, wherever his state is, she found out that her food stamp and her Social Security got cut off. But all this time she's been sitting on $5,000. So I don't think he thinks that she's a criminal. I think he's just really curious. So she tells him, it's none of your business. I don't have to tell you, blah, blah, blah. So he acts like, well, if you're not going to tell me, then I'm leaving. And he gets up, puts on his jacket, and she tells him to sit down. She's like, sit down. You're causing a scene. People are looking at us. So he sits back down. And eventually she does tell him that the money came from her mother's life insurance. And so Mikey's like, what was the big deal about telling me that? Well, Mikey, that's her business. She doesn't have to tell you where she got this money. That is her personal business. Maybe she doesn't want to talk about it for whatever reason. Maybe it's difficult to talk about. I don't know. But I felt like Mikey should not have forced her to talk about her money. They're not married. They're not engaged. They're not living together at that point. So it's none of her business. I just didn't think that she should have been forced to divulge that information. So he acts like, well, okay, that's fine. It was no big deal. I don't know why you're keeping it from me. Then they talk about the pros and cons of him moving to Ohio with her. And he made a list of the pros and cons. And then basically the bottom line, he decides to move to Ohio. And then she promises him as they leave the restaurant, she decides to, give up her cookies to him. She lets him know that, he can have a bite of her cookies when they get back to the house. And so he's really excited about that. Now, the little blurb says that they are living together, and they had been living together for about 4 months when the show wrapped. So I'm glad there was a happy ending to Mikey and Chelsea. I just wish that Mikey and Chelsea would appear on Life After Lockup, because I feel like this is what this show, you know, we need to, I understand that the drama and the mess sells, that brings in the viewers, but it doesn't matter. I don't think it's going to hurt anything to bring in a couple that actually works out. And so far, Mikey and Chelsea, they seem to be like the most positive of everybody on this show. So I would have loved to have seen their story continue on Life After Lockup. I love Mikey and Chelsea together. I would have loved to have seen, you know, how their story ended. But I guess, you know, wetv was like, we don't want none of that positive sunshine over here. We just want the mess and the drama. Moving on to Kyrock and Britney. So Kyrock and Britney, when we see them, they're still arguing about whether or not they want to have children. Britney is really upset about the fact that Kyrock told her, look, maybe I don't want to have kids ever. So she runs outside to the backyard, and Kyrock follows her out there. They have a conversation, and Kyrock tells her that, you know, you can't plan for everything in life. So sometimes you just have to, like, forget about the plan and just live life. And Britney says to Kyrock, but we're not a normal couple. We're not a traditional couple where we can just have a baby whenever we feel like it. If we want to have children, we do have to plan, because it's going to be a very long process for us to get to that point. And so she says, the only thing that I want to know from you is that, do you want children eventually? Like, do you see yourself having kids eventually at some point in your life? And he says that he cannot promise that. So after that, they go visit Kyrock's brother's grave, because he had a brother that passed away in 2015. Kyrock tells us that his brother walked from Virginia to Ohio or something, and he ended up getting hit by a train. And so they give their condolences at the gravesite. And it's Kyrock and Britney and one of Kyrock's other brothers. And it was a really emotional scene. And then Kyrock broke out into a very, very passionate rap at the gravesite. So that was a very sad story. But we're going to see their story continue on Life After Lockup. Moving on to Anthony and Shereé. Now, this one was really sad. So Shereé tells us, because when we see Shereé, she is packing up Anthony's stuff. As, like, you know, he's out of there. So she's packing up his stuff, and she tells us that they got into a really bad fight over him communicating with other women. So she had looked into his phone, and she found exactly what she was looking for. And she saw that he was keeping up communication with other females. They got into an argument about it. Then he tried to grab her phone or something. And so they were tussling over somebody's phone, his phone or her phone. I don't know whose. I think it was her phone. So they're tussling over this phone, and Anthony ends up biting her on her back. So she calls the police. The police make a report, but then she refuses to press charges. So I think that the charges were eventually dropped, because she said she didn't want him to go back to prison. So Anthony's mother comes over to get the rest of Anthony's stuff. The mom is on Shereé's side, saying that her son had no business, you know, putting his hands on her, biting her, putting his teeth on her, or whatever. And so Shereé tells the mom, you know, as much as I love and care for you, I need you to give me the keys to my apartment, because I don't need you and your son coming in and out of my apartment. The mother understands, gives up the keys. And I'm thinking to myself, there's a reason why that first wedding never took place between Shereé and Anthony. There is a reason why the universe was stopping them from getting married. This ain't for you, Shereé. A man who will do that to you, bite you on your back, this isn't for you. This is not for you. But the little blurb says that Shereé, she still communicates with Anthony, but right now she's focusing on herself. But she did say that she was not going to take off her engagement ring, because she's hoping that he gets better, because he's supposed to be taking anger management classes. She wants him to get better, and she wants to eventually try to work things out. No, ma'am. No, you don't. No. He's talking to other women while he's proposing to you, living in your apartment. You're going above and beyond trying to help this man get a job and get his life on track, and he's busy communicating with other women, and then he bites you on the back. Absolutely not. I veto that. Moving on to Louie and Melissa. So Louie's at the dentist to get his teeth extracted so that they can fit him for his new dentures. So he puts in the dentures. They install the new dentures, which are temporary because they still have to fix them. And he looked a whole lot better. He looked a whole lot better with his dentures than he did with his, his regular teeth. And what happened? He said they were too big. He didn't like them. He says they're too big. He said they're way too big and they're uncomfortable. And the dentist tells them, I understand, but these are temporary. We're going to eventually, shape them up to fit you. In his confessional, his teeth look fine. His teeth look great. And even with the temporary ones, as the scene continued, it looked fine. It wasn't that bad because it just wasn't that bad. So anyways, as they're leaving the dentist office, he doesn't forget to get the dental assistant's phone number. She gives him her phone number, but at the same time, he FaceTimes Melissa a little bit later on, and he's trying to figure out where are they in their relationship. And anyways, so Melissa sees his teeth. She laughed at his dentures. She laughed at his dentures, and then, as far as our relationship, he tells her, you don't put a relationship on pause. You put a game on pause or a movie on pause, but you don't put a relationship on pause. Like, what are we doing, Melissa? So Melissa says that you're not accomplishing anything. You just stay home with your mommy eating ice cream all day. But he is, Melissa. I don't know what you're not seeing. This man was in prison for 9 years? And already he has a job. He bought a car. I don't understand, Melissa, what the issue is. What are you not seeing? He was in prison for 9 long years. You have to give him credit for the things he's done so far. At least he's not out there wilding out like Kyrock, being with you and then, an hour later being with somebody else. What do you want this man to do? Even though he did get that other woman's phone number with the teeth that you paid for. So, Louie meets up with his mom and this girl named Kennedy, who is a friend of the family and who has her eyes on Louie and wants to be with Louie. And so Kennedy asks him, what's up with you and Melissa? He says, Melissa's my girl and I'm going to be going to see her pretty soon. I'm going to give her a surprise visit. I'm going to pay her a surprise visit in New Jersey. The mom flips out, and I guess we'll see the rest of their story on Life After Lockup. So Melissa and Louie are still going strong. Moving on to Asante and Rea. So Asante goes to see his new girlfriend, Quita, and he brings her flowers and everything. And, they have some adult time together. And then after that, he steps out and he FaceTimes Rea. And it's just funny to me how these people are they're with one girl and then they go be with another girl, or they're with one girl and then they step out and they're talking to another. It's wow. There's never a shortage of women for convicts. I guess for all the men out there, if you want women, if you want a lot of women, go to prison. Go to prison. You're going to be fighting them off. You're going to be fighting them off with a stick, because these men who come out of prison, they're just surrounded by women. Anyways, so he FaceTimes Rea after he's done with his adult time with Quita. And the good thing is that they had a really good conversation. Rea asked him, so where's Auntie? Where's Auntie? And Asante is Auntie's nobody. It's nothing. Get off of Auntie. He says, I'm actually at my girl's house right now. I got a new girlfriend. Her name is Quita. And Asante says that he is moving on. Rea ain't got no choice but to move on as well. He says that Rea was just too much for him. She was just way too hyped for him, too crazy, too dramatic. So he needs somebody a little bit more quiet. So she ain't got no choice but to accept it. So she's like, you go off, you do your thing. I'm going to go do my thing. I'm going to still have love for you. We'll still have love for each other. We'll always be friends, etc., etc. So they end on a really positive note. And I think they both got the closure that they needed. I'm glad that Rea got the closure that she really needed, because of the fact that, Asante ended up passing away shortly after this. So at least she had that final conversation. She did let him know that she loved him. She accepted the fact that he was moving on. He had the maturity to tell her that he was with another woman and that he's moving on as well. So that ended on a really good note for them. Unfortunately, he passed away after that, but they have that final conversation. So the mess is going to continue, y'all, on Life After Lockup. I'm just really disappointed that we're not going to see Mikey and Chelsea. Thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it on your way out. Please don't forget to rate the video if you like this content, subscribe to my channel, and I'll definitely talk to you later. Bye.